Welcome back to Who's in Your Cloud, 21 Steps to Secure, Reliable, Trusted Technology. I'm Lauren Lev, Marketing Manager for TechOnPurpose, and I am very excited for this Who's in Your Cloud special episode today to discuss the cybersecurity implications of the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict. Before we get into it, make sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel down below. It really helps us out. And while you're here, check out our entire Who's in Your Cloud vlog series in our playlist above. We post episodes of this series every Tuesday on LinkedIn, Facebook, Spotify, and of course, here on YouTube. And you can get episodes delivered straight to your inbox by signing up at techonpurpose.net/blog. From the boardroom to the water cooler, Russia's involvement in malicious cybersecurity events has been a hot and debated topic for many years. But how should we adjust our attention and priority to these nation-state cyber risks given the recent Russia invasion of Ukraine? The Russian government seems no stranger to malicious cyber activities, with allegations including suppression of social and political activity, to stealing intellectual property and harming regional and international adversaries. Today, our passionate, sassy, and savvy cast of cyber experts are here to break down what we do and don't know about the bad and the ugly of Russia's growing impact on global cybersecurity. All right, so first up, I will introduce author and independent cybersecurity contractor, Jim Bowers. Jim, give us the rundown. Why do you care about cybersecurity?
Hey, Lauren. First of all, thank you very much for being back. I love being on Tech on Purpose's Top 21. It's awesome to be here. So what drives me with cybersecurity? I think cybersecurity is really what drives me and I'm passionate about is simply the fact that it touches every aspect of our lives, not only in a corporation aspect, but our personal aspect, especially due to what the pandemic's done and how we're working today. We're working more closely in home environments, working from anywhere. And the ability for these cyber attacks not only to affect businesses, but it can have huge outcomes on us as people in general, such as the colonial pipeline. So really glad to be here. Thanks for having me on board and looking forward to this conversation today.
Next, we have Jay Ryersey, Vice President of Global Security Sales at ConnectWise. He should be a familiar face because him and his colleagues have had a large presence on the vlog. But Jay, remind the audience who you are and what your role is at ConnectWise.
Thanks, Lauren and Matt, for having me back again. I must be doing something right.
Yeah.
I'm Jay Ryersey. I'm VP of Global Security Sales at ConnectWise. We are the world's leading IT provider of software to the service companies out there. And that does include cybersecurity, where I've spent a large portion of the last section of my life dedicated to helping secure small businesses. So I'm excited to be here and very much excited to hear probably what we don't want to know about what's going on behind the scenes.
Speaking of what we don't want to know, we have ConnectWise's threat intelligence evangelist and cyber researcher, Bryson Medlock. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Bryson, I'm very happy to have you here with us today. You can kind of give us a peek behind the curtain of Oz that we probably don't really want to know. But introduce yourself and tell us more about what you do at ConnectWise.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm really happy to be here today. I'm Bryson. I do security research. I've been in the IT and then security industry for 20 plus years. I like making bad people sad. That's what motivates me. Tracking down what the bad guys are doing and trying to stop it. So yeah, I'm part of ConnectWise's cyber research unit. So we're the security researchers at ConnectWise. We mainly focus on some of our security tools and building threat detection around it, as well as threat hunting, and then just gathering intelligence and focusing on what sort of threats are facing or that MSPs are facing today.
As always, we have TechOnPurpose's founder and CEO, Matt Tankersley. We're twins wearing our matching shirts today.
Man, guys, thanks for having me back. And you guys all make us look good. So we're so blessed to have you back. And Jay and Jim, repeat offenders. Glad to have you. Bryson, I think you have the best line yet for introductions to making bad people sad, man. That's a,
Yes,
that's a
yes. Dude, that's a keeper.
yeah. We're gonna copy that one. Welcome back,
I stole
everybody.
it.
We're excited to talk about Russia, Ukraine today and what that means.
Tell us why we are taking a deeper dive into why we decided to have this special feature episode today on Russia's impact on cybersecurity.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Lauren. And again, thanks everybody for taking the valuable time to have this very worthy discussion, right, about cyber risk and security best practices in general. And then, what does this Russia-Ukraine thing mean? How does that change the environment? Well, I've said from the beginning, I wish we didn't even need to have these conversations, right, about these very real, devastating risks of cybersecurity. But it's clear the topic's not going away.
Mhm.
Now, with nation states present and expanding their malicious efforts, right, these things must not go undiscussed, or more importantly, adoption of these best practices is clearly an operational priority for nations and organizations everywhere, regardless of your size, right? While we as a nation deal with the rising economic pressures of inflation and even divisions between political parties, friends, and family, the enemy's at the back door, and I'm afraid he may be already in the kitchen, in the living room, and even likely our bedrooms and cars, as we've heard in other episodes. And anywhere there are internet-connected devices are present, right? So best cyber practices, right, like never before, that's not an option. How does the current Russia-Ukraine war impact that conversation? Well, let's turn that over to the real experts. And I'm anxious to see what we learned today from each of your unique perspectives on the problems and solutions that help TechOnPurpose, our peers, and organizations everywhere to achieve the reality of secure, reliable, trusted technology in the face of these ever-changing threats. So, where would you like to start, Lauren?
Jay, over to you first. The Russia-Ukraine conflict is merely the beginning of modern warfare being waged online for some time now. So, what are your opening thoughts on the elevating risk factors from the current Russia-Ukraine conflict?
I hope that we're overblowing this
Mhm.
and that, right now it's not an issue, but it's going to be an issue at some point.
Right.
So better we start talking about these things and addressing them. I have confidence, a high degree of confidence based on contacts in the space that NSA, our military, they're already fully prepared for this type of activity. They know what's happening. They know what the playbooks are. They know what they would do, and that they've got hopefully countermeasures in place to protect our most important, critical infrastructure and assets. That does not reach down into business,
Mm.
and especially that small and medium business, that, two-person accounting firm that's, in their second year of business, and they're trying to work through, coming out of COVID and run their operations, all the way to those, 2, 3, 4,000 employee businesses that are really struggling to hire and retain the security talent.
Mhm.
We're all challenged with these things, and I think we need to go back to the basics. Pick your framework, assess your environment, follow the 21 recommendations that we've been talking about, and understand why they matter and how they fit your business, and do your best to be prepared with a survivability plan.
Mhm.
I'm kind of going beyond even just backups, but what does it look like to survive a cyber attack these days? And I'd even go so far, I'm opening up a new can of worms that wasn't on topic for today, but
Mhm.
how do insurance companies, how are they going to look at cyber warfare versus just a cyber attack? Someone falls victim to a ransomware attack is different than if it's nation state and its intent is malicious as part of a warfare attempt. I can't even imagine where that goes. And I've been asking the insurance people that I know in the space, what's happening? What does this mean? How are you looking at it? And they're throwing their hands up. They don't have a good answer yet because it's something that we've not ever encountered. Domestic terrorism and those kinds of things where, bad things happen to buildings and people is one thing. But when you start looking at what happens to data, I don't think they really can grasp that. So if I'm a business owner, I'm thinking, okay, what can I do? Right. Again, I'm going back to the top 21 list that we've been talking about for the last, I don't know how many weeks we're on now, and make sure that we understand what the impact of those are to our business, and make sure we assess, because at the end of the day, the things we're about to hear about from Bryson and team are things that we can take positive action on now to avoid pain later and help minimize the impact of a cyber attack.
Yeah. Well, Lauren, let's keep that going around. Jay, I got to tell you, man, I've been looking forward to this conversation, and if you're following the top 21, cyber risk insurance is part of that conversation. But I hadn't connected those two dots in the way that you just did. And knowing how insurance companies work, and knowing how companies want insurance to work, and knowing little about how nation states and malicious actors choose to work together in harmony, and how all those things connect to impact, oh man, SMBs. Wow.
Yeah, the act of war in a comment in an insurance policy. What does that mean in today's conversation? And again, I don't think we have an answer. I think it's probably another session where we go deeper. You can't see me right now, but I've got goosebumps, because if this were to happen, if we were to go wide open cyber war, I don't know how insurance companies could survive.
Yeah. And in the face of that kind of devastating impact, how would they modify their definition of liability and coverage related to acts of war? And how does a third-party actor that happens to be from Russia and has no intentional intent of working from a nation state perspective to attack an SMB, but yet the insurance company chooses to interpret it as such? Wow, man, that's a can of worms I hadn't even thought about.
Very good point. I'm going to take it to Bryson. As our cyber researcher, obviously this topic has been on your radar probably for quite some time, but it's now, more pertinent than ever. So what new methods of attack are emerging as a result of this Russia-Ukraine conflict? And what else should we expect to see as the conflict continues to unfold?
The nation state threat actors are using the same tactics, techniques, procedures that they've always used. There hasn't been a lot of new things that have come up, not a lot of 0 days they've been sitting on. And it's a majority of the ways they get in are still just bad password hygiene and phishing attacks. The only thing that was really new per se was they were exploiting some default behavior in MFA. I won't name the vendor, but there was a MFA attack that they were doing. Essentially, if an account had gone dormant because the user was no longer active, but they still had their Active Directory account active, then their account gets disabled with their MFA provider. But then if they are able to guess the password, they can re-register and re-enable MFA. And so if the account's still active on the back end, then they actually can control the MFA and are able to log in and get initial access that way. That's the only really new technique that we've seen and kind of highlighted an exploit in the default behavior of some MFA providers. But otherwise, it's been the same thing, and it's mostly been bad password hygiene. It's been either weak passwords or password reuse and phishing attacks. It's amazing how many times everything kind of comes back to that. Those and IoT devices that aren't patched. I would say that's probably you take care of those, and it's 95% of your attack surface as far as what threat actors are actually using. Right. And I just made that statistic up. I don't have the actual number in front of me, but it's very, very high. That's how they're getting in, and that's still how they're getting in. The main difference in what we're actually seeing is the main difference in the tactics that we're seeing with these nation state threat actors, as opposed to criminal groups that are after a profit, is what they're after, and they're after denial of service. They're after destruction of property or intelligence, as opposed to your typical criminal group, which is after making money. And so the nation state actors are deploying data wipers instead of ransomware. Several of them have been disguised as ransomware, but they actually just delete the data. So that's a pretty significant difference. Ransomware operators typically want to actually encrypt the data in a way where it can be decrypted, so they can make money. It's bad business to just wipe the data, but the nation states don't really care about the business side. They just want to destroy the data, disrupt services, and just cause problems for their targets.
That's a good point.
Yeah, so I know we're going to go to Jim there. What I heard, which was interesting, right? We've been talking from the beginning about these 21 best practices, and very early in the conversation, we talked about complex passwords, and we talked about unique passwords for every credential, and we talked about, IAM and SSO and all of these very things. And it's, as you said, Bryson, everything's kind of coming back to these core, low-hanging fruits when people have bad hygiene when it comes to their passwords. And, we have vendors in the case that you mentioned that have vulnerabilities in their MFA platforms, right? Those sorts of things. And I know we're all moving a lot. We all talk about a lot of things all day, every day. And obviously this is a broad topic that we're trying to simplify and focus on. And this is the first time in this group that I've thought about it, right? And I think if I were to reflect on, I want to carry this thought forward, maybe even ask a question in the process. But if I reflect on what I am aware of in recent times of a maybe classified nation state, I think of what I thought I heard of Israel doing to Iran when they were trying to disable their nuclear efforts, right? And I seem to recall someone saying something about an exploit that literally took down their entire operational systems of their nuclear production facilities, right? I just thought about that while we were talking in the context of nation state. And I'm curious, Bryson, how were they able to deliver that, right? And is that present in the conversations we're already having about how Russia might be doing similar things in our national infrastructure? And again, how might that roll over into the business fire, right?
I think what you're thinking of is Conficker. I believe that was the one.
Okay.
And this was
it Stuxnet?
Or Stuxnet. There we
I've
go.
been Stuxnet. Yeah.
I think it was
That's the
Stuxnet
one.
where they delivered a PLC control that altered the speed that they cooled the nuclear reactors. The pistons changed the speed. And
specifically targeted that hardware that the Iranians were using in their nuclear plants. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. So Stuxnet, and I'm not deeply familiar with it. I mean, how was that delivered? Was it somebody walked in the door and stuck a USB in something, or was it?
So
yeah,
I'm not sure that that's ever become public knowledge.
Okay.
I think the ongoing joke has always been it was a USB, stuck in someone's bag, and they were curious what it was and put it in. But
oh wow,
it wouldn't surprise me because it was a PLC that was impacted if it wasn't a circuit, a chip change in the PLC that got delivered to them to help build the nuclear plant. And they had been in for a long time and no one knew it.
Interesting.
No different than we saw China was altering circuit boards on equipment that was destined for the US and was identified quickly, but only because some security people had received that equipment for their own environments, and they looked at the circuit board mappings and found an extra device on there which they didn't expect. I mean, who would check that?
Yeah.
I mean, when I order my computer from Dell today, I'm not going in to look and see if it matches their original, board specs. I trust that it's right. And
wow.
Exactly. Wow.
That's the problem. So, but yeah, back to what happened in with Stuxnet. I don't know that we know. And Bryson, you may have more information, but everything I looked at previously, even when Symantec did an entire report on it, never actually said how we got in.
Wow. Yeah.
And I'm glad
that was a while ago. I mean, it was more than a decade ago, so it took me a minute to go back and check my notes. I think it's generally believed, the initial infection was the USB flash drives, but I don't think it's been 100% confirmed on that.
Yeah, old guy. I forget the passage of time sometime, but it did. I mean, nation state thing, right? I mean, alleged or not, right? So it clearly brought some damage. And we just talked about so many factors that are part of our top Cyber 21, and we've talked about how this, and we're here to talk about how these nation state attacks. Basically, what I'm hearing, Lauren, so far, and let's get Jim to get a word in, is that everything we've been talking about from day one about this, the best practices that we need to implement are just even more critical to adoption. And we haven't talked, did we talk about USBs, right? I think that was in Zero Trust episode. Talked about
We've talked about it a couple of times. Yeah.
The ability to prevent USB connections, and yet simultaneously not just making it possible for folks to use USBs, but have tools to get real-time access. Yeah. All right. I'm going to hush up. Jim, let's give you a chance to open up on the topic here of Russia-Ukraine conflict implications.
Hey, Bryson, very relevant points. BJ, great points. And I think one thing we overlook here is let's think about why ransomware is on rise. It's because of the chaos. The pandemic had a lot of chaos, a lot of content, right, for these threat actors. And let's think about the war in Ukraine and how that's generating content. Yes, nation states may not go after the small business, but if they're causing chaos and they're causing trepidations in media and in our societies, then what do you think is going to happen? These organized crime groups are going to rise up. Now they have content, and now they're going to go in tandem with these guys. So the nation states may not be attacking our small and medium-sized businesses. They will attack, our infrastructure. Like Bryson said, they'll go after to disrupt, to delete, to not really look at it from a monetary perspective, like you saw how they did the Colonial Pipelines. That it was actually not Russian initiated. Bryson, correct me wrong. It was a Russian hacking group that fostered in Russia. But I think what we need to realize is you're going to see these multi-vector attacks rise out of this. A, they're getting more content from the war in Ukraine, right? We see the accelerated potential of these cyber attacks, not only in Ukraine, we saw it. We already saw a response from Anonymous, right? Anonymous is a geopolitical group, one of the most well-organized hacking groups that no one knows who they are. They attacked Russia. So what happens here is all of these, also we got to think about, Jay, you talked about these SMBs. Think about how many little SMBs support these government entities that are attack vectors. How many of these little small mom and pops are providing parts and supplies to water facilities, to electric grids, to all of those pieces? I live in South Carolina where there's so many mom and pop shops, small businesses that help BMW and their big plant in Greenville, right outside of Greenville, South Carolina. So I think what we're going to see is not only do we have to be worried about the cyber warfare, but again, it's generating content, it's generating distractions, it's enabling the organized crime, the monetary threat actors, more content and more ways to attack us, right? Simply for the fact of it will kind of domino effect, right? Nation states probably are never going to attack small, medium-sized businesses, but they will attack certain infrastructures that we have where small and medium-sized businesses are supporting, but also organized crimes play off of that chaos and they increase their attacks on the SMB space. So I think we're in for a world. I don't think the Ukraine, I think we're at the beginning. And I think we're going to continue to see this. I think Putin is very angry at the Western world. And I think we are going to absolutely be a target, not to mention the rest of Europe being a target, and that will enable other threat actors to generate content and accelerate their attacks on companies and commercial entities.
So a million thoughts. That's brilliant, Joe. I mean, I had a million thoughts when you were talking about it. And one of the things that I'm reminded of is the sanctions, right, that the U.S. and the West and others have placed against Russia. There's no question these are impacting Russian business owners and billionaires and all those kinds of things, right? There's no question that those guys could, and perhaps in reciprocity should, how do they affect the same impact on businesses, their peers in the United States, right? So I think what I'm hearing is that there's an obvious trickle down effect, right? And if we're as a nation saying we're going to bring harm upon industries in these countries, why would we not expect those industries to want to do the same thing to our industries, right? Whether it's the nation state or it's the industries out of reciprocity. So just,
Matt, it was interesting because when you start thinking about what's happening, we haven't seen, as Bryson said, any direct, volume of attacks coming our way yet, but we have seen a whole bunch of reconnaissance work done, and I'm going to call it prep work done for what this could look like. And I'm curious, Bryson, if you want to share, 2 or 3 or 4 things have happened in the last few months that kind of set the stage for what's coming, because all that ties back together in that conversation.
Yeah, Bryson, scare the hell out of us. Come on.
Well, Jenny already did that.
Yeah, I know. You're so welcome. But
I wasn't
Bryson's going to
prepared.
really scare us. Bryson's really going to scare us.
Yeah.
Well, if we just look at what's been going over the past few months, I mean, we really kind of saw some things ramping up back in like Q4 of last year. There was a significant increase in dark web sales of Ukrainian leaked databases and user credentials. That's the word I was looking for, credentials. We saw an increase in like phishing attacks against Ukraine. And then in January, there was Whispergate, which was one of those disk wipers that was released, as well as some defacement of websites. So that's one of the tactics that they've used a lot of. So there was about 70 Ukrainian government websites that were targeted. Only 10 of them were actually compromised, but they had several several messages that were designed to sort of stir the pot as far as like some racial issues that are going on in Ukraine, as well as messages that said things such as "wait for the worst." There was also a large-scale DDoS attack. So there was right around January the 14th, 15th, all these things happened at once. There were some indicators at the time that their attack might have begun around then, and some of this might have been a precursor to that. This might have been a test leading up to it. But the actual attack, of course, got delayed for a while. There's been a lot of social media bot farms that have been discovered. February 9th, there was a bot farm that was found inside Ukraine that was shut down that had about 18,000 social media accounts that were just constantly posting like, disinformation and things that were all designed to increase tension in the area. And then, of course, on February 23rd, that when I think we saw more DDoS attacks, the Hermetic wiper, and then which was another disk wiper. And that's also the day that the US and UK released information on Sandworm, which was an IoT botnet, something they actually had known about since 2019. But they decided to share the information in light of the actual attack to kind of share that. And then since then, there's been a number of DDoS and wipers, and just that's been a lot of what's been going on. Tons of disinformation on both sides. There's people who are doing disinformation. We're starting to see some deep fake videos. Saw a video earlier today of the Ukrainian president saying things he hadn't actually said. And then there are just so many different quote unquote hacktivist groups or even cybercrime groups that are coming in on one side or another. I've got a list here of like 30 or 40 different groups that have come out and declared for Ukraine or Russia, and they're actively fighting each other. And yeah, back to Jim's point, it's not just the nation states that we have to worry about, but a lot of the cybercrime operators are specifically doing things to hurt people that they think are either directly involved with the conflict, or they're blaming the US for, well, they blame us for everything. So there's some of that going on. Kante was a big one that was in the news. So the Kante is a ransomware group. They were one of the first ones to like come out and publicly declare for Russia. They released a statement on their data leak site saying that they supported Russia and they would come after anyone who attacked Russians' infrastructure. They would attack your infrastructure back. And then a couple of days later, so Kante is a very large organization. And someone who had the inside scoop, many people believe it was a Ukrainian researcher who had infiltrated Kante, but we don't know exactly who this person was. But they actually had a year's worth of chat logs and data on Kante, and they leaked it publicly. So we know a lot more about Kante now than we did a month ago. We've learned how large they are, how well organized. I mean, reading a lot of they've got like meeting notes, and you can go through it. It just sounds like a business. You've got managers, you've got a full infrastructure as far as an HR organization. There's an org chart you can look at. It's amazing how organized they are. There's been some source code that's released, so that's kind of been a big thing is Kante, and they've also apparently have some ties to the Russian government, which is no real big surprise. But there's been a lot going on. Other things that have gone on. So Revil was another pretty well-known ransomware group. They were responsible for the big ransomware attack back in the July 4th weekend last year that targeted like 40 plus MSPs and their 1,500 plus clients, ransomed all one day. That was Revil who was responsible for that. They were actually arrested by the Russian law enforcement back in January, and many people believe that was really more of just a PR move as tensions were heating up around the globe, and there was a lot of people who were disdainful of Russia and the things that they're doing. A lot of criticism they were receiving about their stance on cyber warfare. So there were a few weeks in January where they just really started cracking down and arresting a number of groups. So Revil was one that got arrested. There was a few different carding forums and sites that got kind of taken down. Again, I think most of us believe that to be really a PR move on Russia's side, not really cracking down on anything, because then we see large groups like Kante that have like direct interactions with Russian law enforcement. They're still very active. So if anything, they might have been taking down some of their competitors. That's just some of the things going on. But yeah, it's constant. There's so much right now, especially when you bring in all these vigilante groups. There's so much vigilanteism going on. Anonymous is one that's, a lot of people are hearing about, and they make a lot of the big news just because they've been around for a long time and we've all heard of them, but they're not the only group out there. Like I said, I've got a list here of something like 40 different groups. A lot of them I never heard of before. Some of them have just appeared. Some of them have been around for a while. And actually, Ukraine's actually been recruiting volunteers, their cyber army, they call them, or the IT army of Ukraine, where volunteers are they're doing DDoS, and they're trying to hack into Russian systems. It's really just, we've never seen this scale of specific targeted vigilanteism in the cyber world before.
It's like guerrilla warfare on the web.
Yeah. And what happens when all those turn their attention, on the U.S. or other,
Good point.
potential Ukraine allies? I know that we haven't taken a position, but for the most part, I think we have. And, what's that going to mean for businesses? Because they're going to get swept up in the net of attacks, whether we like it or not, Matt, which really goes back to, why you're doing this whole series is, what can we do and how can we take steps to protect ourselves?
Man, I mean, Bryson, you said so much. I took a lot of notes, and there's probably about a dozen questions I could ask, but I think I'll pause and say, here was the summation for me. In the world where we have such realistic deep fake video, right? One of the things I took away was, how do we know that this Kante IM link isn't in and of itself a huge deep fake? Right. And I think the point for me is how do we as individuals and organizations and managed service providers and cyber experts, how the heck in this new changing world do we know what's really real?
That's right. And matter of fact, Matt, I've got a good deep fake, a new one of you that if you have time, I'll be glad to show.
I knew it was coming.
I think Lauren's
due
for one.
Buzzword deep fake. I was like, Jim.
I think Lauren's due.
I've got it. No, it's all Tank. It's Will Ferrell. So I'll be glad to show it when there's time.
Done deal. Well,
all right.
Let me ask a specific question, and then let's keep around the room, Lauren. And I know we're running out of time. So, but I do want to ask this one question. I think I heard you say that these bot farms that you were talking about were in Ukraine, and they were doing disinformation campaigns via social media, if I'm not mistaken, right? Now, is that Russian, pro-Russian people that have put those things inside of Ukraine to do this, or do we know?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. So they literally have infiltrated nationally and injected all of this disinformation campaign into that environment to accomplish.
Well, think about it here. Disinformation, this bot farms that we did during all the turmoil we've been going through, they were here in the U.S. because you got to make it look like it was posted from a geopolitical, geography perspective. So, yeah.
Wow. All right. Well, Lauren, we've got 9 minutes. What did we not talk about? And I guess let's all think about asking ourselves in the closing question, what is it that people really need to know? Then we'd like to believe that we know that answer, but and how does this issue really escalate what we've been talking about all along, and maybe even just reprioritize the topic?
Bryson, what do you believe listeners should do to better protect themselves during this time of uncertainty?
Well, I'll go back to, if you look at the most common ways that all these groups are getting initial access, it's phishing and bad password hygiene. And honestly, those have been around for as long as we've had computers and we've had email, and we have fixes for those. So, come on, guys, clean it up. We know what these problems are, and we've got controls, we've got solutions to these. don't use the same password on every site. And that's it's not even just weak passwords, but it's the password reuse that is a big problem. Password spraying. I think Microsoft did a report last year of all the like compromised accounts that they had. A third of them were just from password spraying attacks, which is where they already have a username and password and they're just trying them out. So because somebody's reused that password on some other, you go to some random website, some forum or whatever it may be, use the same username and password. It's a hobby site that somebody set up and they don't maintain it. It gets compromised. Those passwords get leaked. Now you've got a list of usernames and passwords. You try them everywhere. That is so common. And use a password manager. That's a big one. So you have a unique password for every site, and then MFA everywhere. And if you really want to do it well, don't even just avoid SMS if you can, because that's a lot easier to hack. And then use get a YubiKey. Something that you actually have a physical device on you. So even if your MFA account gets compromised, they actually have to have this physical thing on them to access it. There's the little extra level security. Those things exist. They've been around for a long time, and it's easy to fix. I know that I keep saying that everywhere I go because it is still a major problem and is the most common method that the threat actors use for initial access, and we have fixes for them. So it's time to get those things fixed.
Yeah, I love it. That was exactly what I said, Lauren. Without knowing it, Bryson just endorsed episode 3 on complex password management, episode 4 on identity access management, episode 8 on phishing protection, and then dark web monitoring. Guys, how are you going to know when this is happening, right? Well, we monitor that dark web for those credentials when they show up. So I had a feeling we might end up basically saying that everything we've been talking about is as critical as it's ever been. But let's keep the ball rolling and closing out the conversation, Lauren.
Jay, with this warfare on the web, what should we and small businesses be doing to better protect ourselves during this time?
So there's too much to know. I mean, I'm guessing if we actually let Bryson really talk and he shared what he's been doing, the last several months, the amount of data that his team and he actually look at on a daily basis, like the tools that he uses ingest 56 billion events a day.
Oh my God.
And they're having to sort through that information. So cybersecurity is a team sport. We need the researchers to give the tools, the knowledge, understanding of what's happening. And that needs to be shared out to all of us, which is really where, Matt, you and I spend a lot of our time is working with companies, like ConnectWise, like working with consultants like Jim to help understand what's going on so we can help our clients make the best decision possible. And if you lose any one piece of that equation, you're lacking the knowledge you need. But at the end of the day, if I'm a small business owner, I care about a small number of things in my business. Can I get to my financial systems? Can I pay my bills? Can I receive money? Can I pay my employees? Because if you can't do that, you don't have a business. So look closer at the security on those things. Look at your business line tools. What do you do for a living? If you're a doctor, it's your medical data and the work that you do for patients. If you're a dentist, it's their health records. If you're a lawyer, it's your client. Look at the data that makes your business work. And then look at the controls around how those things are secured. And the best way to do all this is to start with an assessment. Again, just have somebody look in, take a view, who has access to the researchers and the teams doing all this work, and bring it back and say, okay, these 6 things could cause you harm. Let's go tackle those 6 things. Exactly. And you're going to get back to MFA, password hygiene, and some of the tools that we talk about. But if you don't know why those tools matter, then you've got to have the assessment to help identify what the risk is to your business. And it's not as hard as we make it. No. And it's not as scary as we make it. And I think that's probably important to keep in mind too.
Yeah.
Quoting TechOnPurpose's founder and CEO, Matt Tankersley, you can't know where you're going if you don't know where you are, which is why we have our cybersecurity risk assessment, which you can sign up for at who'sinyour.cloud. That's right. Thank you for queuing that up for me, Jay. It's perfect.
Yeah, and for clarity and all the right reasons, right? It is ConnectWise that empowers us with that technology, guys, to deliver you these reasonable to free risk assessments. So do definitely take advantage of that. And for those that didn't hear it already, we created 1 through 21, and Jay, one of the things that Lauren and I realized is that we're trying to tell you about the 21 so that you'll go get a risk assessment. And what we realize is the risk assessment is the most important part. We should have made that number 1. We put the cart before the horse a little bit, so we're gonna shuffle that around a little bit.
Oh, just turn your paper upside down.
Yeah,
there you go.
That's it.
You start at 21 and work your way to 1. But you
There
can't
you
do
go.
that either. So, you need to assess, though. That's very important.
Yeah, thanks for the great tools that you guys give us. You guys are one of our most important critical partners in all that we do. And so, Jim, sounds like you've got final words on Russia, Ukraine, and motivating viewers to take this whole cybersecurity topic serious. Don't wait.
I think Bryson nailed it. I think we overcomplicate this. At the end of the day, we're the weakest link in this whole piece. And I can't stress enough, I've said this before, Matt, on some of your episodes, employee awareness, cybersecurity awareness and training and phishing should be part of the culture. It shouldn't be something done every month. If we never click it, if we never open it, if we never go to the malicious site, none of this goes anywhere, right? So I can't stress enough, continue with the employee education and phishing, make it part of every day, part of your culture of the organization. And then the other top 21 layers are critical components, right, within protecting organizations. And as we continue with these environments, if we continue with chaos, threat actors love chaos. It makes their phishing emails a lot better, a lot more realistic. They play off emotions of humans. When we drive and base decisions off emotions, they're typically not the best decisions we make at that time. So having this relevant content enables them to make your business very insecure. So keep us protected. And, I'm going to have to come back up to the deep fake because I am going to throw this in there, Matt. That's the next big phishing, I think, is the deep fake. And I'll be glad to share that with the team before we end, because it's a good one, I think.
Guys, here's the summary for our viewers, right? We've been telling you from day one, this is not option, right? And it because you want to do what you do all day, every day, and you'd love to not think about any of this stuff. But the reality is it takes, the risk vectors are so many, they're coming at you, whether you want them or not. The Russia-Ukraine thing is only advancing and escalating. And what I heard some of today is that there's a increased collaboration that is possible and likely already happening between nations and criminal organizations. This stuff isn't going to slow down, guys. Get on top of your security practices. Reach out to a service provider like TechOnPurpose or whoever's in your backyard. Take these practices. Really, if you want to know how to start, go look at the top 21 because we broke it down for you in that order of priority.
Thank you for joining us for our special episode on Russia's impact on global cybersecurity. We hope you took away a lot from today's episode, but most importantly, learned more about how to protect yourself in this ever-increasing threat landscape. We've said it before and we'll say it again. It's not a matter of if, but when you and your business will face a malicious cybersecurity attack. Next week, we resume our regularly scheduled Who's in Your Cloud vlog series with episode 13 on network security. Remember to watch, listen, like, and subscribe. Catch up on all of our episodes on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Spotify. And get episodes delivered straight to your inbox by signing up at techonpurpose.net/blog. And finally, I will close us out with the biggest takeaway of today is sign up for our free cybersecurity risk assessment at who'sinyour.cloud. Before we leave, Jim's deepfake, let's go.
All right, I had to get something fixed up, but here we go. Let's see if you guys.
Yes.
St. Patty's Day, baby.
Hold on. Hold on.
Perfect.
Open the video.
Need more cowbell.
Oh,
There you go.
Dude.
I love this.
Yeah, you're right, dude.
All right, I'll send that to you, Matt.
Thank you.
I know some people that would gladly put that to use.
Oh yeah, me being one of them.
And with that, I'm out of here. Thanks,
All
everybody.
right, guys. We'll see you.
Bye. Thank y'all so
Happy
much.
St. Patty's Day, guys.